So, okay. So see here how it says one
Mm-hmm.
in the last podcast when it said two, it had the hours. That's why I thought we did 2 hours and 20 minutes
But it just
when
one
we
as
had
in like
only
where you
done.
just start.
Yeah, because it says like hour two
Mm-hmm.
and then shows up the time. All right. We're live once again from the
Here we
aptly
are.
named Free to Offend podcast. I don't know if it's aptly named yet, but you certainly are free.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mic's up here. So, episode number 2, Jimmy.
Episode number 2, Matt.
I'm Matt Antonello.
This is Jimmy Hong.
To radio show.
To radio show.
Here we are again. How's your week? How you been?
How's my week? My week was interesting. You know, I got to start reading because next week I'm going to be taking my level 2 certification in fascial stretch therapy. So I got to do a lot of reading this week. You know, like having anatomy and viewing it differently rather than just as just as a mechanical point of view, because we like to think about movement in that way, right? But just exploring how like different elements of earth, like fire, water, earth, and whatever the fourth element was, but wind. Yes, you're right. It is wind, and how those elements can actually change your view on movement. You know, like in terms of fire, it's do you have enough energy? Are you able to take on the energy, or like are you able to have this new change in your structured routine, as in, and that means in terms of movement, like is your body ready to take on flexibility now, or is your body ready to take on strength training, but so on. But yeah, how was your week, Matt?
You gotta keep going with that.
we'll get more into it.
Deep real quick.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, is that like Thomas Myers stuff? A lot of that, because he's
exactly
like
Thomas Myers.
He's
stuff.
very metaphysical with the way that he speaks about the body. Like
yes,
myofascial meridians. It's written like a textbook, but like the nomenclature he uses and the I don't know. You don't say cadence when someone's writing, right? That's a vocal thing, but I don't know. You can tell the demeanor he writes with is like very mellow. And if you've heard him speak,
yes,
he
sounds exactly like that.
He doesn't really stutter, but he has
the best impersonation I've seen of Thomas Myers. That is good shit, mate.
I have to be honest.
That is
I've
good.
Worked on it a couple times.
Oh yeah, but that was really good. That was Thomas Myers. But yeah, the neurobiology of fascia. So people don't even know that it's almost like a proprioceptive organ. People don't understand that there's all these nerve endings that make up the fascia. So about, I think like 1 to 10 in ratio from fascia to muscle. So like, from muscle to fascia. So every one innervation, or one nerve cell, there's 10 nerve cells in the fascia.
Yeah, I saw that somewhere.
So what that means.
Is that a Thomas Myers?
Well, this was an other article, but this wasn't Thomas Myers, right? Thomas Myers is more like, the therapeutic aspect, the hands-on aspect of how to look at the body.
Because he doesn't normally give like scientific things like that.
Yeah, this was this was by, I think, like a doctor. Like, this was an article by him. But
so
yeah,
10
it was
to 1
yeah
in the ratio of nerve
yeah, and some of these nerves are interoreceptors, I believe what they're called, and I've
heard the word.
Yes, and they're correlated. They work with the insular cortex. I think that's the cortex, and what that has is it triggers emotion.
Yeah.
So like you can hold on to pain and memories of pain in your trigger points or in your tension in your body. So it's almost like, something from far ago that you couldn't forgive could be stored in your body as a trigger point, because it's and that's almost like a metaphysical manifestation of your past not letting go and creating the stress in your body. So I feel like people
when you say that, because I've talked about that before, it comes off as like hippie woo-woo stuff.
No, but it's not.
Like they're mainstream scientists that understand that we store emotions in these fascia. Again, it sounds silly, but when you start doing it, like when you start doing basic MFR, you'll get on a certain trigger point, and all of a sudden you just start laughing.
Yeah,
Like,
or not even laughing, just afterwards, it feels like you're like after you do a good stretch and good release, it almost feels like a high because of the the endorphins that it releases from you releasing the tension in your fascia. Like it's right. So not only like are you feeling really good, you're feeling mobile. So like, and you're pain free. Like why wouldn't you want to be that?
Yeah.
Right. I don't even know why I assumed that people don't even want to be that. But I just know that people don't take on the responsibilities for themselves to take care of their bodies, or like you and myself, like we try to understand our body by mapping it, by incorporating movements that we're not familiar with, and then therefore it challenges our capacity and skill. Right, and I think that allows us to become more fluent in movement, and therefore, because you can learn 3 ways, right? Like auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. And I feel like we often forget that kinesthetic learning, right? Where like, because kinesthetic learning can really incorporate play, and when you do that, there's a lot of creativity, imagination that can be explored, and that's like a hidden power that people often don't tap into.
Right. Well, I was at the gym today at noon doing Noki, and Jeb, is that his name? The guy from Turkey? Have you met him?
I don't think so.
He's a white belt.
Okay.
He just came back. He was back in Turkey for the summer. But we were sitting after class, and Sam and Steve Reese were just like rolling around on the ground.
Yeah.
And Jeb said, like, I think that's his name, Jeb. He was just saying something like, it's just a playground for adults. Like,
yeah,
this is what we had. We all come in, we roll around on the ground, and we leave with a big smile on our face. Like, that's what he said.
That's pretty much about right.
That play, like, it's become so, I don't know if you say taboo in Western culture.
It almost is taboo. It's almost like people get anxious when they think, or they have to, or when they think about engaging in it.
It's become shameful. Like, play as an adult.
It's weird. It's
I don't know how to explain
and
it.
Like, and the weird thing is, like, in schools, they punish children by taking away play. And I feel like that's, like, that's a pretty, I don't know, that's a big trade-off, I think. Right? Like, punishing someone, like, in that, I don't know, like, like, some people might say that's justifiable to a certain degree.
Maybe it's effective.
Yeah, maybe it's effective, but but I just feel like in a school, anyways, there's not much play to begin with. Like, recess is getting, I think, shorter and shorter, if anything.
PE classes are dropping out. Not that they do much, but at least they're time where.
And it's called physical education, but they don't educate you in anything about your physical body. Maybe sex class would, like, maybe grade like 5 or 6, right? Okay, sure, but it's a big joke usually.
Yeah, I mean, at those young ages. Yeah. The most important thing is that they are using their body, because at that age, there's probably.
That's where
I just started to think about, like, how to educate young kids, because that never occurred to me until very recently. Like,
they would
how
be
young
entirely
can
different.
You start to where they can. You don't want to mold a kid too much, right? You don't want to try to turn them into robots and make everybody have perfect posture and all
condition them into like.
What type of teaching would you give, like, really young kids? That's something that I'm trying to think about. But I was making a point there. At that age, it's just important that they explore their own body.
Yes.
Naturally as well. Like, just the amount of time they physically spend using their body is super important. And psychologists talk about that too, right? Like, if kids don't, Jordan Peterson always calls it rough and tumble. If they don't rough and tumble when they're a kid, they just, like, don't learn how to use their body properly.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be able to explore that when you're a kid, because when you're a kid, you are the most flexible. So it is probably the time to ingrain into your brain ranges of motion at the extreme ranges where you're the most flexible, so that, that might actually be probably maintained but degrades through life, but maybe a higher maintenance for a higher, better flexibility, which you should, I think it's just, there's always that, we go back to that ideal and real, like the real thing is no one's going to teach, like, children in elementary school how to do proper squats, how to engage their core, and how to breathe through their diaphragm, and how to sit in a desk so that they don't slouch and create bad posture. Like, they don't do any of these things, but it should be mandatory, because what children are the investment into future.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if we're creating people who are inactive, who are physically not strong, I don't think they can be mentally strong either. I think there's a huge correlation between willpower and, you know, and like and determination and discipline by engaging into physical activities.
Right. Yeah. Western culture, but particularly Western science, like we've gone so far into the microscope of science, studying one simple thing that we've forgotten all of the larger pictures, and that's something that Thomas Myers really reintroduced to me. Is that like the mind-body connection has been completely forgotten about in Western.
It's all thinking.
Human athletics or what do you call it? Kinesiology, I guess. But it's like even the fact that, like, you know how you get that intimation when you say something that if you said it in front of the average person, they would think it's lame.
Yeah.
Like saying the mind-body connection, like even has that stigma of like, this guy's just a hippie, pot-smoking hippie, which
I know what you mean, and I think it's just the way, like even just history, just the repression of like even I think in the 60s and like then like there was a heavy drug influence, and they tried to oppress it, and the government labeled them as hippies and then made them I guess a enemy of the state almost. In a way, you know, it's not good for the country.
Like unofficially.
Yeah, like unofficially, but you know, like they almost did it to a degree. But and then hippies have this whole idea of being free and free spirited, but that is also it's important to be free spirited and like, you know, because if you emotionally hold on to burdens, your body actually feels heavier. You know, you physically become heavier, and like it's a weird concept to some people, and people are like, what are you talking about? That's some wishy-washy stuff. And I'm gonna be honest with you, there was like, you know, this point in my life where I started to understand that I didn't like where I was, you know, and I kind of realized that nothing was going the way I wanted it to, and you know, like I had passions and dreams that I wanted to follow. So where was it going with this?
Just talking about the body being heavy.
The body being heavy, yeah. So from my experience, there was a point where I started to incorporate a lot of meditation and try to free myself of my past burdens or future like illusions, as they would call it. So when I got rid of these, I could notice that I had more lightness to my body. I was able to stretch my clients better. I was able to do plyometric exercises easier. It was easier. I just had a better control with my body, because I think what's happening is, because neurologically your fascia is connected to the autonomic nervous system. Right. So if your body is able to be more relaxed, and there is less anxiety and less cortisol, or like and less of those like negative, I guess, hormones or negative emotions, right? I keep losing my train of thoughts. Jesus.
I'm gonna go a little bit tangent off that. It's interesting you talk about plyometrics and having the fascia relaxed, because like going back to what we're talking about, where these knots, these bundles of taut fascia, those areas store emotion, and that, and you're talking about releasing the emotion. Like I don't know if this is substantiated, but I would imagine there's a cause and effect in terms of relaxing your mind and releasing tension from those fascia without even doing like myofascial release. Like I'm again, I don't know this for sure, but I would think that
global tonus is a you know, like you can achieve less tension through your body,
right? And
like having a global decrease in tension through breathing. Right, through diaphragmatic breathing. So that's a real thing, and that allows you to I tell some people to almost breathe into their pain, like acknowledge the pain and breathe into that spot.
Naudi Aguilar talks about that during all the myofascia, like breathe right into the area. Yeah, and he's very pragmatic about he's very scientific. So for him to say things like that,
that was from my experience too, like just breathing into like the pain, because it's, you know, your body is like a ventilation system, you know, and you have the ultimate control per se. Well, like not ultimate control, like, you know, a lot of your body's function is autonomic, but you know, you have you have some choice in the matter.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple thermostats that you can fuck with.
Yeah, so, certain things, and you have just like motor control. So we are manipulators of the world. We have hands and arms that almost hang off our bodies, which not a lot of animals on this planet have that sort of anatomical structure. That's why we have metropolitan cities, and that's why animals still live in the jungle.
Right. Yeah, we're made to
we're
things,
we're made to interact with the environment.
Yeah.
The environment, again, everything is environment. So and people don't understand that their body is it's almost like multiple engines and different systems all running at different times.
It's an ecosystem, right?
It's an ecosystem with like multiple microsystems in it, and then macro systems in it. So it's very complicated. So here is what the Western, like going back to what you said about Western medicine and isolating and trying to cure one thing or cure a spot, and what that kind of led to was physical therapy and chiropractic and those things to try to fix a spot, right? Fix one area. Whereas and then people try to hail and praise someone who can fix someone's pain, but that's not how a human body works. That's a mechanical way of looking at the human body, like a robotic way. And we are not robots. Like there's believe it or not, like some people don't believe in evolution, but there's a lot of, even the way our bones, our spines are through the years of evolution, shaped and formed, and you can trace it back to different animals that we had shared these sort of structures and bone structures with, and you can see the common similarities to like our bones and skeletons to other mammals.
Right. Well, that's there's a couple videos. I've seen one. Maybe there's only one. It was I can't remember if it was a YouTube video or an Instagram post, but it was Naudi Aguilar talking over a clip of like a cheetah running, and he was explaining the anterior and posterior oblique sling systems in the cheetah and how they just work in perfect harmony. And going back to the point about releasing the fascia that I was originally going to make is that the fascia stores electric energy, right?
Yes.
Yes. Elasticity. Not
yes.
Well, I'm sure it does too, but it stores elasticity, right? So if you have a knot in the muscle,
yes,
that's it's disrupting the elastic capabilities of the tissue, because now that elastic energy has to dissipate or disperse around the knot, and you lose some of that energy, and it doesn't allow the force transmission through the fascia. That's something that I think it's a little bit more focused on in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, but previously, like the elastic components of fascia, because we only consider the muscle, right?
Yeah.
But we're not considering the elastic components of the entire myofascial meridians. So the entire functional line. How does that elastic energy get transmitted in a baseball pitcher from his leg to his arm? It's not simply just the sum of the muscular connections and the biomechanical outcomes. It's also there's more nuanced energy systems adding to that outcome of throwing a pitch.
So going back to like being a fixer, or like being like great at being able to cure someone's pain, like their spot, and be like, oh yeah, like you're the that's not what a body worker is. A body worker is someone who facilitates the complex system of your ecosystem, and by trying to contacting your fascia, which is contacting your autonomic nervous system, we try to tune your nervous system, so your hypothalamus, which regulates how tight or how loose your body is, that it signals that to almost decreased tone. So that's how that's what we should be doing, facilitating the body to allow it to do what it's supposed to do, not intervene it in a way where like I'm gonna, you know what I mean, right? Like get in there and like try to fix it like my way. Yeah. But your way isn't gonna accommodate the body, because modern science versus millions of years evolution. I think evolution still beats any modern science that we have, right? Just like think about how like they can't even make a mechanical robot that can replicate human gaits, human walking.
Right.
They can't even do that. That's how complicated our walking is.
Right.
That the bioengineered, biomechanical engineers can't figure that out.
It's interesting you say that.
And I think the hands
I think
too.
I'm super biased when I say this because I just like to indulge these ideas of fascial connections. But have they ever made a robot where they had biomechanical arms, but also elastic components over top of the joints to facilitaate elasticity in the joints to help the gait pattern? I wonder if there's limitations to their design.
All the replications of one that looks like gait just looks so mechanical. It has no organic look to it.
Right.
And I guess that's
swing to it.
Yeah.
There's no jazz.
Yeah. There is none. There's no poise. There's none of that.
Yeah. Well, that's something. CGI people have problems with in hair. That's one of the hardest things that I've heard that for CGI people is to make hair look natural.
Really?
Because think of like how many fibers you're talking about, and then you're trying to calculate like what happens when a breeze runs through this random forest of right?
Yeah, that sounds
the algorithm to make hair look natural is got to be out of this world. But
that sounds very complicated. Yeah, it sounds almost like that's probably the reason why they want artificial intelligence to figure something that out, right?
Yeah, that's the idea, is to get them to solve problems that we can't solve.
But that just becomes, I don't know. There's a lot of warning. Do you follow like that stuff at all, like that tech?
Whenever somebody talks about it, I listen to it. Like Joe Rogan's had quite a few people that are really into it.
Mm-hmm.
Who was on recently? Really good chat about artificial intelligence. Sean Carroll, I think his name is.
Okay.
He's a quantum theorist.
Okay.
Theorist? I don't know what you call
Theorist?
Theorist, yeah, that's it.
I think that's it.
And he was on there. They went balls deep into aliens and artificial intelligence and like very pragmatic discussions about it too. Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation.
That's pretty cool. I should check that out actually.
Yeah, you'll get into that one.
Yeah.
Why do we get on artificial intelligence?
Just to solve the mathematical equation for CGI. People who work in that industry to make sure hair can look nice and sweet in movies. Yeah. So what have you been reading recently?
Shameless plug for our boy Dylan Deuce.
Oh yeah.
I just bought The Pyres.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, so that's his third novel.
Mm-hmm.
I've already read the first ones, and
I'm like halfway into The Pyres right now. Yeah, he's we should probably have him on the show one point.
Once we get guests on, once we can set up, we can afford another mic. And but we have a handful of people who've already talked to me about it. So
really?
Come on, so
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, I'm stoked to get Dylan on.
Yeah, he has some good insight and knowledge into certain.
I have a feeling that'll turn into like a 4-hour podcast.
It could turn into a 4-hour podcast. Yeah. We might have to take like an intermission middle and then like continue.
Get super baked.
Just like right now.
There's no way we're staying sober for that one.
No, it's impossible.
Man, I love chit chat with him because he's got a very educated interpretation of a lot of the philosophical things that we discuss, like the archetypes in religion and psychology, because he's really educated in those areas, philosophy and psychology.
It's almost like just literature. He loves reading, and like he fell in love with mythologies, and like especially the Norse mythology. He loves the Vikings, right? So something about that, but the cool thing about mythologies is across all cultures, they have similar mythologies, So one of the things, like there's a sculpture that Dylan has, and it's this Viking. I'm not sure. It looks like a warrior that he made, that he sculpted. He calls it Ouroboros, and that word actually is a representation of a snake or a dragon eating its own tail. And in a figure 8 sometimes in the Western, and or like it just to resemble infinity. So when it's eating its own tail, it's like death and rebirth and recycle and all over again. So that idea of death and rebirth of the dragon eating its own tail, not only is it found in Western mythology, it's also found in Eastern mythology. So like how far do these truths really go, like predate to, and like how like and like that's one thing I was so ignorant of was history and like mythologies. I'm like, those are just tales, but they're not just what we learned from Jordan Peterson, is that they're not just tales. They're like stories of important.
They're archetypal.
Yeah, they're archetypal. They're like,
and they maybe not that they are, but they encode fundamental truths.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They like
they represent.
They seal them in like a time capsule.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting. One thing Jordan Peterson said about the Bible, and it was in response to somebody asked him about the propagandistic components of the Bible, and did he think that it was all hidden knowledge, or that there's some propaganda written in there by the people of the time? But he made a really good point that propaganda doesn't survive because it's not real. Mm-hmm. It's extremely esoteric to the particular zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't carry on. So these stories that have been remembered, because the Bible was recollected, right?
Yes.
And told as stories by many different people. Mm-hmm. Their narrative structure was, I guess, somewhat of an accident, but the stories that made it in there, they didn't carry the propaganda because it just gets forgotten. The stories that we remember, there's a reason that those can get passed on for so long. There's a reason that this book has outlasted the Roman civilizations.
Yeah.
The all the other civilizations. My more modern history is not particularly, or what are those ages between like 0 and 1,000? What do you call those? Like, I don't know, the first millennium history.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at it, but like the Genghis Khans, and outlasted all of them, right?
Yeah.
So those stories in code, like we were saying, those fundamental truths. Yeah.
And one of the fundamental truths that people often neglect is that they have to be constantly moving, right? That it's almost crazy when you tell someone that they have to be like, they laugh at it like it's almost like impossible when I tell someone that, or a client, that they have to do a certain exercise like 3-4 times throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Something very simple too. And they go like, oh, like, what are you talking about? I don't have the time for that. I'm like, well, that's what you were meant to do anyways. So instead of you accepting, like that you don't have time, you should accept the fact that your body desires all this. It requires all this maintenance and attention for you to feel like emotionally stable, be in a better mood. Like I'm sure like people are often really pissed if their back isn't hurting or if their neck is hurting. Like those people are not in good mood at all. Like why would they be? They're in pain, right? So it's and
you become very neurotic.
Yeah, that pain, too. Right? Exactly. You really
close off
do.
From the outside world, and you just spin in circles in your head.
Yeah. So and a lot of people are in physical pain. Like there is not a day that goes by when you go into a gym and you talk to someone and they complain about something. Everyone has something. So instead of trying to accept the fact that we have no time, we should accept the fact that we're all hurting, and we all truly are, and we all complain about something, and we should do something about it, which is do like something where a movement that you're restricted in the most, like 4 times throughout the day, just like 5 minutes each. And if you can't find that and you can't do that, then you have no compassion for yourself, which means really no compassion for others. And that's the same idea as in like taking responsibility for yourself. And if everybody did that, it would just be a whole different world.
Right. And a lot of that is not even adding more. It's just reorganizing the time you already use.
Yeah,
so, okay,
exactly.
I'm somebody who in particular needs an hour or two at the end of the night to completely distract myself, like an episode or two of TV, right? Yeah. I don't watch a whole ton during the day. Mm-hmm. I get my work done, but I need to wind down at night, and I'm very neurotic as a person. So having an external source relaxes my mind. I don't want to be moving or anything like that.
Yeah.
But during that time, just sit on the floor
Yeah.
Right? Don't sit on your couch, sit on the floor. Because when you sit on the floor, you're constantly having to move, readjust your hips, your knees, your feet go numb. And like, this is do you know Katie Bowman?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is like kind of Katie Bowman-esque concept. Is like adding more movement into the time you already spend, the time that's already filled. You can reorganize that so it includes more movement. And like she talks about sleeping too. Like she doesn't sleep in a bed, right? She has no furniture in her house.
Wow.
They don't sleep on a bed.
She takes it to the extreme.
They just have little mats on the floor, right?
Well, that's the most natural way to sleep.
Exactly. And what she's talking about is while you're sleeping, your body will actually constantly readjust. And so you're moving at a very slow pace throughout the entire night. And also, because you're not sleeping on a big comfy mattress, you're getting like micro myofascial release because you're laying on your bones, and then that gets uncomfortable, and you adjust. Now you're releasing another area.
That's a cool concept.
It's these all-inclusive solutions that changing one little habit daily will lead to long-term results. Like that was a big one for me, was just sitting on the floor. I got that from Ido Portal.
Oh yeah.
I don't like everything he does, but I like.
He's controversial. Controversial. Like some of his methods I think really work, and then some of them I think are being, like any person in their field who's at their top, it's going to get criticized by others.
But some of them don't have any context. Like I like his idea of play for the sake of play.
Yeah. But he lacks context, is what you
sometimes like
he does like it's not like functional patterns,
right?
It's not
They're
like
very much
patterns.
This is how this works under this context. This is how you want these muscles to be firing.
Yes,
like they're very scientific in that manner. He's on the far extreme of no context, just allow your body to do whatever. I think that can be problematic.
It could be problematic, but I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to detach this concept of, because I can tell he's a very philosophical man. Okay, so I think he really practices like the whole idea of being present moment to the degree where, like, if you're so present, and you allow your body, then you can really truly feel your body. It should feel prepared for any movement. Is what he's trying to achieve. And so he's trying to almost tap into like an ancestral part of your brain where like, like they call it like the reptilian mind, I guess, right? Or reptilian brain, where like there is a part of you that was part reptile, that's just a predator and that just wants to kill.
Right.
There's a part of your brain, in the brainstem, that's still that ancient ancestral brain that evolved into what we have now. So I think he talks
of flow state, like
exactly. That's exactly the same.
State.
Exactly the same thing, right? So,
you're reduced to base instincts.
Yeah, just reactive and just only perception. Only perception.
Right.
There's no thinking involved whatsoever. So there's absolutely no mind, and you're just feeling. So
there's no latency between your thought and your movement.
Yes,
there's
exactly.
It's almost like the algorithm runs instantaneously all the time.
Yeah, you don't have to think about it twice. And like I think that's what he's trying to, because that in a sense almost gives you like a huge sense of liberated freedom from your body, and that I think that's almost like an enlightenment approach through the body. Right.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. The things that he does with his body.
So that's why I'm like okay, like this is something more than physical. I think he also goes into a spiritual and a mental aspect that like movement has but everyone like knows that like movement has an effect to like your emotion, like how you walk. If you walk with like slumped shoulders, like that you're like that person's probably thinking about
of people's demeanors.
Or like they know, or you could tell their mood, right? Depending on how their posture is. So like movement decides, and like, or it shows so much more than we think it does. And you know what? If you're not moving, like you're just getting left behind, because you maturing as a person, like if physically, that's a movement. That's slow, really delayed, long movement, right? Because a movement has a start to finish. You start and you finish, right? And you move one big whole, like you can think about life as just one big movement, in a way that your body as matured, because like all the cells in there are doing, so like you're constantly moving. Your heart, even if you didn't have a head, if you cut off your head, your heart would still beat. Not as fast as the brain would regulate it, but it has its own rhythm. So it sets its own like it sets its own rhythm. So that means there's some sort of intelligence in the heart, and that kind of goes to show you, it's like, does that mean that the human, like, or like in evolution, like, you know, like how did we get multiple like intelligences in one being?
Yeah, almost. We have other organs like that too.
Yeah, like your
liver, they're all self-regulated to a degree, right?
Yeah, they're almost like its own entity of its own, and like it has to relay information with everything else. So like you're like multiple people living in one person, right? And you have to take care of that. That's a lot of responsibility, actually. So the fact that people don't see the body in that way, it really goes to show like why like heart disease would be like second leading death in Canada, the second leading cause in death, and why like obesity and like
I think it's number one in the States.
Probably, yeah, I think. And like what is number one in Canada is car accidents.
It might be heart disease.
Yeah. Oh, heart disease?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then, but yeah, like how obesity and like overweight, like that's like almost like a fifth of our population, I think. So like that's a huge economic issue. Because all those people, like, it's a precursor, obesity and being overweight, like precursor to diabetes, heart disease,
stroke, heart disease.
Osteoporosis, or like
diseases.
A bunch of shit you don't want.
But that's inflammation, right? Yeah, and scientists are finding everything has some inflammatory component to it. Like they're just across the board, they're finding this to be the case.
Yeah.
And that's like what you're saying, diabetes.
It
predisposes you to everything.
Yeah. So like, and all these people are going to need healthcare down the road, and that costs people money. That costs people tax money. So there is a real issue that that should be addressed but never talked about. Right. That's like, why isn't anyone talking about a solution for that? Why is no one taking an approach in that way? Like, why are we always? And you know what? It's a mess. Like, it's just. I think Kathleen Wynne, the Ontario Premier, she's, I think, in trial right now for, for one of her cabinet members, I believe, for like deleting email. I think they're accused of deleting emails and like deleting information that was scandalous stuff.
Right.
You know,
I haven't heard about this.
Well, yeah, but there is that, and like obviously you wouldn't hear about it too often, right? Just because. You know, who wants to live, but like
nobody hears about Canadian politics.
Yeah, but that's important. That's important.
Right.
You know, that just goes to show you how corrupt everyone is. You know, like I guess, you know, like just because you're liberal and you don't stand for anything doesn't mean you just don't take bribes. I guess you're still a bad person.
Yeah.
Yeah, like but being like not being political. Like I'm not. I wouldn't say. Do you have a political stance?
I don't like categorizing everything. That's one of the things that's really frustrating about the current political climate. Is that it's very polarizing right now. We're moving towards class-based interpretations of the world, and I think it's very dangerous. So I might throw out words that tend to describe me. Like I'll use the words conservative and liberal to describe the spectrum when I'm trying to, like, if I talk about an idea and I say, oh, this is a conservative idea that I'm interested in, because generally I probably consider myself more liberal in terms of I'm very high in openness, trade openness, right?
I'm very open too.
I like ideas. I like freedom. I like diversity, like all those things, those base dispositions based on like being open and agreeable. I'm also agreeable. I think that makes me a beta male, high in openness and high in agreeableness.
I'm
but
I'm the same way though, right? Like so, but it doesn't make you, I don't think, beta at all. I think what it makes you do is that it allows you to be able to socially interact with people easier, and that allows you to have more.
Well, it's the maternal aspects of the personality.
Yeah, but there is always, like Carl Jung talks about this, the anima and the animus.
Right.
You know, there is the male and the female part of you.
Yeah,
everybody does. Like even hormonally, you're not just full of testosterone. Women are just full of estrogen. There is a little bit of estrogen in male, and there's a little bit of testosterone in females. Like there is, like, that's the crazy thing about politics. People take one stance. It's like, okay, there is great ideas about this end. There's great ideas about this end. Why don't we collaborate and just find something in between and find a harmony?
Right.
Why do we always have to be one or the other? Why does it always have to be this way or that way?
Well, that's the result of ideological indoctrination, right? When you're not actually thinking for yourself, when you're just following this predetermined list of ideas and constructs that you're supposed to agree with, just because you are this, you are a feminist, you are a conservative, you are a liberal, whatever it is, if you're indoctrinated into the ideology, the concept of nuance does not enter your life, because everything is already laid out. You're already, does this match my handbook? Nope, it's out. There's no.
You only see your life through a certain pair of glasses, and you don't try any other pairs, and you block yourself off in an isolated world where you think, you perceive it to be who you are, but is nothing of who you are. And when what I mean by that is, like you're not what you're attached to.
Right. You're not your class. Yeah. You're not your race. Exactly. You're not your gender. Even though there are, like, people want to say there's no such thing as gender differences, biological gender differences. Those people can go fuck themselves. It's scientifically proven. It doesn't mean that every female is this and every male is that.
It just means that there is an aspect in all of us that is just not our physical manifestations, not the school we went to, not the car you drive, not like it. There is something.
There are innate sex differences.
Actually, something not below, something above all of that. That there's a similar something between all of us.
Right. And once you get into the what do you call it? By something distribution. I can't remember that name. Where you have two groups that overlap, but the average is still very distinct. So once you get into those groups, the differences between the most masculine man and the least masculine man is gigantic. And the least masculine man falls very far into the criteria of the feminine domain, right? But statistically, there are differences, like between gender, biological gender, identity, right? And sexual orientation. Like, these things are highly correlated in science. But like upwards of 98%. So that doesn't mean that there aren't individual differences. It doesn't mean that the individual differences of that small percentage is not the thing that actually makes the world interesting, right? Like, it's difficult to have that nuanced conversation now, because everything politically based it's very touchy now. Everything's a hot topic. And if you say there are innate gender biological differences, all of a sudden you become a misogynist and sexist and racist somehow and all that jazz, That's this class-based mentality of, as soon as this happens, you're going in this box and that's it. You don't come out, because we haven't looked at the details. It's just, here's a headline, clickbait. Okay, that's what that person is. You know, an article comes out in the Niagara Standard. Jimmy Hong is a misogynist and, has a picture of you with your hands on one of your clients, like stretching it. You know what I mean? How many people just see that and then, fuck that guy. They didn't read anything. They don't know who wrote it, right? So it's very important. That's why when we were discussing the name for this, I wanted to pick Free to Offend. Our other option that we came down to was Conquering Common Ground. It's okay, but I don't think it has the same political punch. Not that I'm largely political. But free speech is very important. That's what this is, right? That's just what
us just talking, right? Talking about what we want to talk about.
Authentic free speech is like, it's the reason why we've been introduced to all these amazing podcasts, because it was the alternative of the mainstream, disingenuous, ideological garbage, right?
What you have to be.
Right.
But whereas some of the people we mentioned in the podcast are people who tell you that you make yourself what you want to be.
They display an array of facts and give you a couple tools here and there on how to make your own decisions. But like everybody that you and I know really respect. Mm-hmm. That's like their foundation, is that I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you this is what I think I know, and I would like to expose it to you, and maybe some of these things will help you along the way.
And a lot of the things that like I talk to people about, it's all experience based. So when I say these things to people, you can't just talk to me and like not you, because you obviously probably apply what we talk about to something, right? Or like that's what we do that's what I do too. Like we talk about something and I go back and I apply what we talked about. So when you do that, you experience that aspect, and then that experience is now yours, and now you understand something more. And a lot of people don't do that part. They don't actually take the time to almost connect the dots
to earn the wisdom.
Yeah,
right. That's something.
Yeah.
Who is it? There's a quote that I've heard, and it was somebody was talking about psychedelics. I can't remember who it was, and the quote was, "Be careful of wisdom you did not earn." And that was like the caution to psychedelics, because psychedelics can be a really good push, but it's like the difference between, I don't know if you call it an experientialist and an intellectual, right? An intellectual spends all their time in their head. They're thinking and they're theorizing, but not necessarily acting on the world. To whereas people who are intellectual but act in the world and take real data to see what the outcome was of a particular action and make adjustments, like those are the people who you see who really have those the wise aspects of their personality, that like the shamanistic aspects, where you can tell that they've learned through doing. So they're not just spitting ideologies at you. They're not just throwing out hypotheses that sound good in theory. They're really using, like you've used a ton with me. You've helped me so much in the last month or so as I've begun training clients, because I know when I go to you and I ask you, this is, I have a client, I'm not sure how much I can progress them in this area. I can tell you've had experience with it when you're giving me replies. And that's wisdom. That's not just theory. You're not just remembering your textbook.
It's not just any advice. It's something where like I took the time to have some sort of, it's what like basic of science is. You make a hypothesis, and you can make a hypothesis with anything. So if I buy this banana when it is this green, how many days will it be, ripe? That's science.
Right.
And like that tells you, if you do that well and you do that enough times and you've made enough tests and trials of that same test, you probably get really good at picking bananas and making sure you eat bananas that are ripe all the time.
Right.
And I'm just saying that because I did that.
The alternative is what most people do, and we do it all the time in our day-to-day, is you say, I wonder how long it takes for that banana to go ripe, and then you do it once and you see this particular banana was ripe in 3 days, and then you walk around to the world parroting bananas ripen in 3 days. Like, that's how a lot of science is also done. It's just like, there's my answer. Okay, I got it.
So going to research, you had something about trans fat.
Saturated fat. So we were the last podcast we brought up coconut oil, and you had heard that article from the American Heart Association. That was demonizing coconut oil. So I actually had 2 other people, when people always ask me, like, actually people have asked me about this exact thing within that week.
Really?
After you did the podcast, 2 other people asked me. I said, okay, I got to actually dig into the science a little bit.
Because
I've prefaced this. Sorry,
I've looked into it, but I've kind of like that was a while ago,
right.
And then I'm just I haven't looked into the information again. I just saw that across, so it kind of made me challenge especially when like anything that says American Dis Association. It's just like, what? Like, is that really? And then it's almost like, and then it almost became like, no, they're wrong. Like, I know they're wrong. So it's good that you got to explore it a little bit.
Well, here's the first thing I want to preface this by saying, one of the things I realized while doing this research, I was talking about it earlier, is that I'm out of shape when it comes to doing research. Like, I forgot that there's a skill set to sitting down and navigating the interweb to get data and interpret it. Like, my ability to connect ideas to say, is what I'm reading true based on what I know, what this article's saying. Like, I read some of the articles from the American Heart Association, which I've come across a lot of people saying are kind of bullshit studies. Yeah. But I find myself reading it like, I'm reading this, it seems right. But somebody's already told me that something's wrong, so I'm trying to check myself. Is this my bias saying that I disagree with this? Or is there evidence? So actually physically have to going from this article to another article and comparing the data is something that I really, really need to practice. So I'm not going to say I have a full conclusion on this, but I did look into it a bit. Okay. So
so you got LDL, HDLs written on there.
Yeah, I got like 4 pages of notes.
Yeah, oh, damn, that's pretty sweet.
So the American Heart Association study was, they concluded the study, the meta-analysis with 4 studies, okay? Part of their reasoning was that there aren't any studies recently that fit the criteria, which was like a high enough population, and
so basically exactly no one's sponsoring enough money.
No. They're going back into previous studies and doing an analysis, right?
Okay.
So they're cherry picking. They're making search from somebody else has described this very well, how they navigated. Gary Taubes, I think, is the article that kind of goes through and picks apart each of these articles or the studies that they use.
Okay.
So there's 4 studies. I'm pretty sure all of which were in the 60s, if not the 70s. So for some, they couldn't find any more relevant contemporary data. So one of first studies from 69. One of the other studies is the Oslo Diet Heart Study.
Yeah.
So this study was unblinded, and for the first 2 or 3 years.
So for people who don't know what that means, what does the study, the unblinded, mean?
The what do you call it? The studier, the experimenter, and the patient.
They know
what's up. They both know that they're getting a treatment.
Okay.
Right? So a double blind is the doctor doesn't know if I'm giving you a pill, and you don't know if you're getting the pill or the placebo.
And those are the most effective types of studies.
What's important is the placebo and the control group.
Yeah.
In this study, the control group for the first 2 or 3 years didn't have any intervention. So it would be one thing if you just changed something in the diet. So you just removed saturated fats, your butters, your animal fats, and replace them with, they generally use linoleic acid, which is an omega-6. It's in like safflower oil. So some of these studies, they were using safflower oil margarine.
Yeah.
Like,
those are terrible oils.
Right. So if you're just switching that,
those are inflammatory oils.
Right. If you're just switching one thing and then leaving them, that's a good control. But the intervention group for 2 years had dietary counseling along with the change in saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat. But the control group had no dietary counseling. So they're making these claims on the reduced risk of heart disease, but the intervention group has counseling and the control group doesn't. Yeah. So, I mean, that study would get thrown out immediately.
Yeah, that wouldn't even...
They changed it after 2 or 3 years. Like, they realized this and then made an adjustment to the study. But...
They can do that? They can just make an adjustment after that many years of conducting?
Well, not anymore. That would never be...
but what they did back then?
Right? Yeah. So this was in the 70s.
Jesus.
Yeah, there was one in psychiatric patients in the 70s in I can't remember where they did it in Finland.
Okay.
And they use some psychiatric hospitals now to do data too, but I mean, there's got to be a big difference between the state of psychiatric hospitals in the 70s and now, right?
Yeah.
And some of the patients
And what they know, they know now, what they know then, that's a huge difference.
Some of the patients were on cardiotoxic meds during the experiment. So this study also acclaimed a high, roughly 30% decrease, I think, in cardiovascular disease outcomes. I think it's 30% on this one as well. Most of them were around there. That were their claims. But, or that was at least the claim of the meta-analysis.
Okay.
And they were on cardiotoxic meds. So this is a co-founding, what do you call it?
Confounding?
Confounding? Is that a word? Let me say. It's a co-founding aspect to the study. Like, you can't just disregard that, right? Yeah. So that was one of the studies they used. And, so that's kind of like the key points I took from those studies. I don't want to go into the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not that I could.
Yeah,
but so there's obvious flaws in these studies. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand my bias is towards this. I'm a ketogenic guy. Like, my instinct is to say, no, it's good, it's good, it's good. So I was really trying to check that while I was doing the research. Mm-hmm. But, man, I read Gary Taub's article. It's called Vegetable Oils, Francis Bacon, Bing Crosby, and the American Heart Association. And he dissects study by study and goes into the relevant literature on it. But there are a few more recent studies that have shown no differences, slight increases, actually, with the incidence of cardiovascular disease and switching saturated fats for polyunsaturated fats. So the intervention group in the studies that were the counter argument, the intervention group either had no difference in cardiovascular disease or actually an increased risk when they gave them polyunsaturated fats. But these were not listed in this American Heart Association's meta-analysis because they were excluded for criteria, right? Yeah. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Coronary Survey, I went through these briefly. I'll just go over it roughly. They compared two diets, and these have fairly large study groups, right? 4,300 men, 4,600 women, right?
That is a big study group.
Yeah.
They don't usually have study groups that big.
So what they did is they both had roughly 40% fat in their diet. So the intervention group was 39% fat. The control group, I guess, was 18% saturated fat, 5% poly, and 16% monounsaturated. And the other group also had 38% fat in their diet, but only 9% was saturated, and then 15% was poly, and 14 was mono, right? And so that's simply adjusting the percentage of saturated versus polyunsaturated fat in the diet, right? Okay. Good. It's a good model. And they came up with no differences were observed for cardiovascular events, cardiovascular deaths, or total mortality. Okay. And that was in 89. There's the Sydney Diet Heart Study
and that study would support the case that coconut oil is good for you, or it's not necessarily. Well, that's not good for you. That it's not that bad for you, right?
That's the other thing about coconut oil. It is mostly saturated fat.
Yeah.
Now there's different types of saturated fat that will affect how it reacts in your body, but they also were not talking about specific studies to coconut oil. Yeah. They were talking about saturated fat and assuming that everything. They made very bold claims.
Yeah.
The point is, they made very bold claims with not very bold evidence.
Yeah, and it almost ties into that whole. Remember last time I talked about different alcoholic drinks probably produce different effects on the body.
Right.
Different ways. The way that oils are made from different plants or seeds or whatever vegetable or it comes from, right? Yeah. It probably produces different effects in the body, although they could be grouped generally as a saturated fat or as a trans fat, right?
Well,
so I feel because I think there's certain properties of coconut oil that is beneficial for you in some senses. I think that one of them, from what I can recall, is it allows the passage of blood-brain barrier, so it can fuel your brain faster.
Yeah.
Or
I think it's ketones.
Ketones, okay.
Which is byproduct of fat metabolism.
Metabolism, okay.
I think that's to do with. I know ketones feed the brain.
Yeah.
So they must pass the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah. So
and actually more efficiently than carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Because they use less. What is it? They use less energy to fuel the brain per ketone in comparison to.
Okay,
to
so
glucose.
like, because people don't know, like you need to use energy to create energy in the human body.
Right.
So it means that when you use a carbohydrate as a source of fuel for your brain, you're essentially using more energy of your brain. It's less efficient because you're using more energy to get less, whereas fat, you use less energy to
all the
to
energy
extract the
systems
fat.
are an investment.
Yeah.
You invest energy and you extract more.
Yeah, so then you get more out of fat. So that's which is the reason why we drink coffees with coconut oil in it, because it gives you almost like that caffeine buzz with like a good source of fuel to the brain. And you can, I really notice a difference in clarity almost, because it's almost, because the fats almost satisfy your hunger and appetite for longer than carbs do too.
Right. They have a good, I can't remember exactly what the mechanism is, but is it leptin? Leptin is your satiety hormone.
Okay.
And saturated fat definitely helps with that.
Yeah. So
your
just
feelings of fullness and fiber too, right?
And
saturated fat as well.
But that allows you to almost think better because you don't have these distractions of, oh, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So I know I truly notice a difference.
Here's the other thing between saturated fat and polyunsaturated fats that most people don't understand, and I didn't even know this until like last year.
Yeah.
And it was really explained to me, is that one of the things with saturated fat and polyunsaturated and monounsaturated is that the polyunsaturated fats, they have what saturated is that all of the bonds are taken up by
one's either curved and one's either straight.
I think it's carbons, right? Or hydrogens. Carbons.
Yeah.
Because that's oxidation. So because these ones have open links, they're more susceptible to oxidation, which is like free radicals, right? Which are like the cancering causing agents. That's why, people talk about antioxidants. Yeah. That's what it's for. It's anti the system that oxidizes cells in the body and makes them more likely to cancerous stress and all that jazz.
Yeah, so essentially we're all burning pieces of paper because you're constantly oxidizing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why you don't cook olive oil on high heat. That's why saturated fats are good for cooking, because they have a high boiling temperature.
Yeah, I keep hearing olive oil is just good for as like a dressing on salad rather than cooking.
You'll oxidize olive oil right away if you smoke it, right?
Yeah.
It becomes carcinogenic.
Okay.
And the polyunsaturated, monounsaturated to a lesser degree, do this in your body. They oxidize within your body after you've eaten them.
Okay.
But saturated fats, they're saturated, so they're less likely to be oxidized. Guys. And that's an upstream system because saturated fat actually, some of these studies we're talking about, they normalize your HDL to LDL ratios. Okay. Now,
which one's
I got to digress to LDL for a second.
Yeah, which one's the good one?
I'm going to go into this because this is something that's very important.
Yeah.
People think of HDL and LDL as HDL is good fat, LDL is bad fat.
Yeah, that's what I've been taught in school.
Not the case. It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
There's a subsection of LDL particles called VLDL particles, very low density lipoproteins. Yeah. The VLDL levels is what's relevant. So what happens is these particles need to get taken out of the bloodstream at some point, right? Yeah. The any cell is in the bloodstream, or any any particle is in the bloodstream, the longer it's there, it's more receptive to oxidation because it's spending more time in the blood.
So it becomes more poison.
So these need to be turned over and cleared out of the blood. Now, there's a protein on the LDL called apoprotein B. That's responsible for signaling the cells in the body to endocytose the cell, which means the cell eats it. Okay. Yes, endocytosis. Yeah. So that's apoprotein B is a signaling molecule to tell the cells to excrete it when it's digest it. Yeah. Right. Take it out of the blood. Mm-hmm. What happens with the very low density lipoproteins, the VLDL, something happens to them where the apoprotein B receptor gets skewed, and it stays around in the blood longer because it's not signaling to get endocytosed. So for one, it's in the blood longer and more susceptible to oxidation, but they're also smaller. they're actually small enough to stick in the arteries and crevices and that. So the very low density lipoproteins are the ones that cause the so-called artery clogging.
Yeah. What's that? There's a word for it.
Atherosclerosis.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So people thought that saturated fat is the heart clogging fat. Actually, saturated fat, I'm almost positive, has been shown to increase LDL levels. I don't know if that's actually substantiated. That's the other thing.
Okay.
All the American Heart Association claims are that it increases LDL, therefore
it's just bad.
It'll be bad for you. But that's not necessarily the case. LDL levels can actually rise, but as long as HDL levels rise more, it will be balanced because HDL is partly responsible for getting rid of LDL, right?
So I've heard about this before. It's when people that's why they tell people to take fish oil is because everything in your grains and like a lot of your food has omega-6 inflammatory fats, and like that probably produces a lot of LDLs. And then in order to just make yourself have a balanced fat diet, all you need to do is take more of the good fat.
No, you also have to decrease the amount of
well, I guess that would make
omega-6s because it's the omega-6s is the ratio.
Yeah, okay.
Ideally, I think it's 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6.
Really?
Okay. No. Well,
I'm not sure.
I think the goal is like 1-to-3 or 1-to-6, but the American diet is like 1-to-20.
Really?
Omega-3s to omega-6s. So it's decreasing the ratio is huge.
Yeah.
Because they compete for binding sites, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
I don't know the ins and outs scientifically of I don't remember the molecular interactions with omega-6 and omega-3, but I know that the ratio is important for how omega-3 acts in the body.
Yes,
and it has to do with its conversion to DHA. So DHA and EPA are what omega-3s. Omega-3s are converted into DHA and EPA, I think. I think EPA. I know it's converted to DHA.
I'm not sure what they
convert it to. But your brain is made of 20% DHA. Like, that's why these things are so important for you.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, like you don't get enough in your diet, so essentially, but you get more than enough of omega-6. So that's why they tell you to supplement yourself with omega-3 fats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was actually pretty interesting, man.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't have everything down yet with that area. It's going to take some more discussion, some more research to really get a full grasp on it. But so I didn't want to say that for sure coconut oil is good for you because I love it and people have told me it's good for you. Yeah. But I can't openly say that I know
because there's no
because I haven't read the research that substantiates that. I've just read what at least refutes the statement that it's bad for you. Okay. So at the very least, it doesn't cause increases in CVD from the literature I've went through. And there are other studies that I don't want to go through it all. There's a podcast that's this is the first one I listened to that kind of got me into the studies was Aubrey Marcus's podcast number 135. I can't remember who he was with. One of the guys that works for On It, but they went through and kind of dissected the articles, said a lot of the same points I did about like the unblinded studies and things like that.
So yeah, like there's obviously, I just feel like.
And read that Gary Taubes article I talked about before.
Okay, but yeah, I just feel like a lot of people make claims now and they say they have research to back it up, but it's just like how credible are those research papers and who's paying to make those researches happen. And the biggest question that apparently a lot of scientific journals now, they don't make it so that you can replicate it over and over so that the testings that they do is able to be replicated. That's how you know it's a constant sustainable result. Like it's not like that anymore.
Because they don't sell.
Yeah, they don't.
It's harder to get published if you're doing something that's already been done.
And that's crazy how like they're taking almost like they're bending truth in a way, right? They're doing that by doing it with their own agenda. So that's why I kind of want to talk about it. Just like it's crazy seeing how like they didn't get any like current research or even start to induce a new research. Like why have if there's nothing that's been done for like 2-3 decades, or like almost maybe or 3-4 decades, why haven't you done or conducted research? You know, because I know some countries, they probably do like annual or every 3-5 year research into certain parts of their health, right? I feel like they definitely don't do that if they're still trying to make claims or still meta-analyze, you know, past research papers.
Well, I think it's also something that can be extrapolated to the day-to-day life of people, not even scientists, is that science is an ongoing process. It's not just you do a study, you have a result, and you say, yep, that's the result. Like what we were talking about with the bananas before. Yeah. You don't just look once and say, yes, that banana ripened in 3 days, therefore all bananas ripen in 3 days. Yeah. It's an ongoing process. Every time you buy bananas, you're looking at it and you're asking questions. Yeah. Well, this one on the bunch was ripe in 3 days, but the one on the back wasn't ripe in 3 days. Okay. Let's try. I wonder if the back banana was out of the sunshine. You had the bananas next to a window, and the sun on the bananas, the ones at the front of the bunch, ripened faster, and you wanted to test that. But you actually have to test it. You can't just.
Yeah. But why is that so important? Is people are like, why are these two people talking about fucking bananas and buying bananas?
It applies to everything.
What we're talking about applies to everything. It just, you know, like, are you willing to are you willing to commit to life so much that you're willing to do that with everything that you do? Like you do quality into it. And why wouldn't you do that? Because it actually allows you to live an easier life if you almost plan for yourself in events and like whatever. And that's why we don't see.
And you allow your old ideas to die.
Yeah, that too. But we don't see like, what's gonna go with that? It's almost like, but yeah, like we'll go to that. We'll finish with like that idea, the whole, you know, like.
It's just constantly living in the scientific process. Yeah. It doesn't mean that every objective science is the way of the world. I think there's a whole lot of, I mean, obviously we've gone into philosophical and metaphysical realms too. Like, I'm not excluding that, but there is something to be said for like true pragmatism and true science, the scientific method of simply hypothesizing, observing, reassessing, hypothesizing, observing, and just living like that. And don't tie your ego and your morality into the outcome.
Don't make it personal.
Right. Like
don't make it personal.
It's like,
and I feel like that's what
we hang on to our ideas, right? And we protect them as if they're part of us. That's what the ego does, right? The ego is trying to hold on to things because it knows it's not real.
Well, it holds on to things because it holds on to things because it fears the death of itself, so it tries to, you know, promote itself through feeling like, you know, you're getting hurt, or there's a part of you that feels really disgusted by when someone says something.
Meanwhile, all somebody said to you is, "No, stupid, bananas ripen in 4 days."
Yeah, like, you know, but
you'll get tied to that.
and you could get tied into it, and so. Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling on right now. But I've had a long day. Been up since like
you're up early with 4 a.m. fitness classes.
So I've been up and I've been just running around, and I worked out twice today. Did 2 workouts. Man. Yeah.
What'd you do?
I just did. Today was more like a strength-based day, so I just did on the rings. I don't know if you can see the rings over there, but I just did some gymnastic rings. I just did some dips and some single arm rows from the ground. That was pretty challenging. You know, I did it not with rotation, I did it with anti-rotation, so I kept the trunk stiff. Yeah. So I was,
I can show you a good, fucking drawing a blank on words today. A variant of
a single arm row.
The single arm row from the supine position.
Okay.
It's from an old functional patterns video.
Oh yeah.
But it's using a row, but involving the whole functional back lines.
Okay.
Functional front lines. It adds a transverse rotation to it. It adds a contralateral.
That guy adds slings to everything. That guy adds rotation to everything.
Okay.
But it is really important because and the reason why he talked about that cheetah is because when you read Thomas Meyer's articles, he will always compare our anatomy to a horse or a dog, right? And what was it going? Yeah, so the cheetah and
the fascial continuities.
Yes, fascial, and it's the way that they move is that the front of their like the front hooves or the front paws, that's where like majority of their weight is, not on their feet like us, right? And there's a sling on it, and the way like the shoulder blade is attached to the rib cage, it's just a sling. It literally looks like a sling is holding up the shoulders. So if we just take that aspect and then just made it more standing and vertical, those slings are still present. They're just twisted and pulled into different ways because now we are upright as opposed to being on fours. So it is still all slings.
Like that was like the one thing when we learned to throw, right?
Yeah.
An animal, what do you call it? Quadrupedal animals, when they're in this position, the fascial continuity between the pec minor and the bicep is, it's not activated because the angle's not right. The one thing the myofascial meridians system talks about is it has to be a direct continuity. It can't turn corners, right? Except a few exceptions. But when our arm is in this position, our pec minor now aligns with the long head of the biceps, and it becomes a fascial continuity. So that's something that our upright posture has taught us. Same thing swinging from a vine. It completely connects the pec minor, which is what controls the anterior posterior tilt. Partially controls it of the scapula, right? Because it's attached to the coracoid process.
What that means for people who don't understand is how forward or how back your shoulder is.
So the shoulder blade sits like this.
Back,
It's involving in moving or like eccentrically slowing or the movement of this motion.
What I just learned what a pec minor does in a. So and this is all context too. So like what you were just talking about is how like when you're in just a normal standing position, how the pec minor has no relation to what to a throw, but the moment all of a sudden you have your arm in the throw, the pec minor engages with the throw. So it's
with the bicep in particular.
So in a particular way. So it's all
that continuity.
So it's all context. So all of a sudden, like you can't. So that's why it's hard to say like what anatomy books talk about as like certain muscles do this. It's like okay, it's architecturally looks like that, but how does the fascial sling work to promote or to create movement? And the pec minor is like the attachment of the serratus. It's the antagonist of the serratus posterior. Anterior. Because
the serratus anterior posteriorly tilts your.
Exactly.
It's your scapula. It's what stops it from winging, right? So they act opposite to each other.
So that there's like a.
But
if you know that it's just like the rib cage. It has a nice
sling. In a shoulder flexion context. They actually act together to keep the scapula from winging.
Yes, and what it
also
does,
because the scapula just wants to tilt laterally as it goes up, but it doesn't want to wing out. So they both control that, right? In that context.
And then what else was going to talk about?
Today I just want to say something. Today was the first time that I had like concrete evidence that the training I've been doing is paying off. Like, I've had intimations that it's really working. All of this contralateral, using your oblique slings, anterior, posterior oblique slings, training. I won't go into all the functional pattern stuff. Maybe one day we'll like really discuss that. But using these slings that cross your body and focusing on transverse rotation, separating your rib cage from your hips, and adding the elastic component to it. So doing a lot of these exercises in very explosive, segmented transitions.
Well, I felt it when we were rolling.
Hold on. Listen, today, we had at the gym today, we had a speed kicking competition. Or Steven, Jimmy, everybody calls him Dave, the new guy, the guy who works at the gym. Everybody calls him Jimmy now.
It's funny. I know. We made it a thing.
They had a little tie pad competition. They wanted to see who could do the most kicks in 10 seconds, just going right, left. And all that motion is contralateral slings, right? It's oblique slings. So they went and they did 16 and 17, right? And I said, fuck it, I want to try this. I went up and did 22, right, in 10 seconds.
Wow.
It's not about the number or winning. When I was doing it, after like kick 3, I realized like I'm moving way faster than they were. I'm completely relaxed. I'm using momentum. I can feel myself using stored elasticity. Like they're kind of going up, hopping, down, up, hopping, and my legs are just going whack, 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 and I'm not taking pressure off the kicks.
Yeah.
I could just, for the first time, really feel the superior. I want to say superior training method of functional patterns.
Yeah,
I really
it
do
is,
believe
because
in it.
I even took one exercise from him, and it was to train the gait pattern, right? And it was just, and I did it for 2 weeks, like just twice, and like just did light sets of it, and I just threw it into my workout here and there. And within 2 weeks, I noticed a difference in the way I walked. I had a way more forward push off, and that allowed me to, so like that obviously told me like some things were straightening out, like right away, and it was challenging my pattern of movement, not just the muscles. So it was challenging how the body reacts to whatever the exercise is, and how that's also like a remembered skill. But yeah, so it's always talk about
it's reconditioning, right?
Yeah, and that's what's really hard to teach people, because they're really like just focused on it goes this way, it goes that way, rather than like a continuum of motion. Like how like it's so like how like everything really starts from the ground initially, and then what's next is like maybe your hips has to be loaded, and then but yeah, like
and even that, like that's something I would love to do more research on. Is I think you could get some information from Katie Bowman off that, maybe in her book Whole Body Barefoot. I haven't read it, but it's about transitioning to barefoot shoes. And like I've recently transitioned in when I'm at the gym training clients, or when I'm hiking, walking all terrain. I've been using the Vibram 5-finger shoes, right? Revolutionized my gait pattern, first of all, already. And
I believe
when you're walking on rocks and tree stumps and all this stuff with these toe shoes, there's no elevated heel, and there's no restriction in the toes. Man, it's unbelievable. So like what you're talking about, it starts with the ground. Like you wouldn't think that would revolutionize how you use your body. Simply the method in which you're allowing your foot to interact with the ground.
Well, that's your structural integrity number one. It's the first point of contact. So I always used to.
Most people suck, mine included, because we put them in foot casts all day.
We don't allow the toes to spread. Here's something that like when I realized,
I was like, how is this not obvious? If you ever notice, look at your outside toe, right? It's not just pushed in, it's twisted, right? The nail doesn't point up. It's supposed to, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like
that's how
your
you
feet
know.
are supposed to, your toes are supposed to be splayed like this.
Yeah.
If you notice, everybody's is like that. The outside toe is actually, it's been so far removed from its design position that it's sideways.
Yeah, it's the people develop weird feet over time, and that destroys your whole body. It affects your whole body.
And it's from wearing shoes.
Yeah, and the reason why it's because your feet are so rich in sensors. Like it's like it could be like the most expensive, like most organic and expensive pressure sensor in the world, and it also has reflex, not only and sensors that allow you to walk too. It sends a reflex pattern up to your spine and down your spine, and you just walk without having to think of.
Yeah, most people don't know that.
But
the walking,
it happens from your.
It's autonomic in the spinal cord. It doesn't go to the brain. So if you have a lesion where you're paralyzed below the hips, if you have some sort of lesion and you're put on a treadmill, your feet will walk. You don't know that you're doing it,
but it'll just start
because
walking.
it just goes to the spinal cord. It doesn't need to go to the central nervous system.
But innate intelligence of the human body, right? And where we always focus on the intelligence of our mind, where we always able to think and create through thinking, but we never take the time to feel, right? So it's simple things like the way you walk, like you're so conditioned in the way you do it. It's almost like a behavioral change when you change movement. Right, it's the same thing. It's like changing your behavior, because how you stand, how you sit, that's all behavior. That's all condition.
Yeah, right? I've been actually telling my clients this when I'm trying to promote the importance of posture. Is that I have reverse engineered confidence. rather than being confident and allowing my confidence to pull me out of this bad posture. I've targeted posture, moved my posture upright, and as a result, I've become more confident. I've changed my demeanor from bottom up perspective, and I would have never thought that was possible before.
I mean,
I notice when I'm talking to people, like I sense the connection. Between my posture, like how I'm presenting myself socially. I still get into the rounded shoulders, but I'm like this a lot more. I can sense that connection between my posture and how I'm relating to the people in the room. Like when
because everything is relation to space, right? So they've done a study.
Intuition, right? You can't explain
it. They've done studies on this, like a psychological studies of people who take on big posture as opposed to small posture, and people in power and often authority have open posture. People who are often, or on the opposite side have closed posture, right? And like posture, and like the fact that you have more of an open posture means you literally take up more space. You really do. So, and the fact that you do that means you're allowing your environment to be recognized by you,
to perceive that
you are as much as you can be.
Alpha as fuck.
But it changes a lot of things. I think there is even like a mental shift in like those two things, right? So that's why it's when you start to, if you ever start to get into bad thoughts, I start to realize, I start to cringe up, like my core starts to get tighter, my shoulders start to pull forward, and I'm like, holy crap, like what am I doing? Like it just, my thoughts are pulling me into a bad posture. So, and people don't even recognize that what's happening playing in their mind is probably doing some, like lifelong damage almost, right?
And then you gotta think of the systemic effects that has in your life. If my posture is like this, okay, so now have the depressed posture, that's going to translate in my mind. Now we're socializing, you're picking up on this because you do it instinctively, intuitively,
everybody
whether you recognize it or not. Now you're changing the way that you treat me. So I'm implicitly subordinating myself to you in the social hierarchy. If you're have an upright posture and I'm down, the result over time is going to be that we're going to take on our roles of either being, sometimes you just are perfectly as dominant as somebody else you're with. And those are weird relationships because you're both like, you're always clashing, right? But most relationships take on a natural alpha, beta reference anyways. There's one who is more, one who's less. And so how much, the point I was making is where the result of just changing your posture has so many more implications than could be calculated.
Because if,
you don't know how these things change your life.
If like fascia is neurological and that's what bounds your whole body, just like your skin, and if that's in a constrained position where it restricts blood flow, which is like in the East, they call it Qi, right? Like Tai Chi or Qigong or whatever. Like they essentially, when you get tight in certain areas, you're blocking off life supply because the blood is charged. That's energy, right? So like posture can play a role in how your body distributes blood, and that alone is a health effect.
Katie Bowman talks about that simply just with head forward posture.
Like that
you have your intervertebral arteries that run up your spine into your brain. You have your carotid artery that runs up your neck. These things are getting,
and when you're
changing the path of them.
And when you get into that position, like you're almost like closing off your trachea too, just because of the way the muscles.
You don't breathe the same.
You don't.
You breathe into your upper chest, not into your bottom rib cage.
And when you can't breathe, like breathing flexibility, we talked about last time. That too. If your breathing flexibility is that you don't, if you can't even have that lying down, if you're catching a deep breath lying down is hard, man, you got some work to do. Like you are like and like it just, when people don't do the exercises or any of those things, like why would you not want to? Like I know you have a lot of resistance when you have exercise, but you're making yourself better maneuver throughout your own world. you have more confidence. Like you're gonna get better posture like out of it.
Yeah.
So like I encourage.
It seems so evident.
Yeah, it's very evident. Just like how evident it is that all those diseases like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, like all those things are actually preventable.
Yeah, diabetes.
Through one thing preventable.
Diseases.
It's exercise. Exercise,
like
the
lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle. But exercise has such a high, like a huge impact on your body. It's like, you know, like your body's like a plant.
Right.
So it's like watering your plant.
It's very interesting because I'm trying not to use the term exercise.
Yeah.
Katie Bowman really got me into this, using the term movement. And her brand is nutritious movement.
Yeah, so movement is nutrition.
She doesn't look at it as just like exercise. Exercise would be the equivalent of like, you're sick, here's some antibiotics.
Okay, yeah.
Movement is, you're sick, okay, eat garlic, eat ginger, get rid of all your anti-inflammatory foods, like, it's like take some probiotics, cold shower.
Yeah.
It's like, movement is the whole day approach as opposed to just 1 hour of the day when you're exercising.
Yes.
That's what
I've been talking about, how when I tell people to do something 5 minutes 4 times throughout the day, how you have to make it, like it's not, you don't go to the gym for 1 hour to sit on a machine when you've been sitting all day to do that chest press machine.
Right.
That is absolutely ridiculous. And if you can't see the insanity behind that, then you're obviously so far deep into a trap that God save you, sir. Right? Because
most people are very disconnected from their bodies.
Yeah, they don't take the time to feel just the simplest things, like how are you standing when you're brushing your teeth? A lot of people don't even give that a thought, but it really matters, because if your hip is on the edge of the sink and you're holding yourself up that way, holy buddy, like you're gonna have
no tensegrity, right?
Yeah, no tensegrity, and not only that, you're promoting already what you already have as a bad hip. You're already promoting that bad posture, right? Yeah. So like people have to realize that because you're a maneuver, you can never truly stay relaxed, because if you do that, you conform to something else. But that doesn't, right? You're not conforming to, you make other things conform for you if you're a maneuver, right? So you don't conform for your environment, you make them. So that's the approach I like to believe in, right? That, like, as much as, the environment shapes you, you can manipulate your environment. It's just like that idea. It's like, why are you hanging out with a group of friends that talk shit about you and make sure you stay in the same shitty down hole that they are in? You got to get an office job too, because we all do. Instead of having that, you have the option of saying no to that environment. Yeah. Just, it's shaping you, it's making you more negative, and it's obviously telling you not to follow your passions and dreams.
That enabling, right?
Yeah, but what you can also do about that is, okay, so what can I do about that to change that whole aspect so that it's actually supporting my dreams and passions? Right. And and so it means you probably have to get rid of or change your environment. Right. Well, you can manipulate that.
That's very interesting. Jordan Peterson talks about that in regard to like alcoholism, right? Yeah. He's like, if you're an alcoholic, the chances that all you have to do is just quit drinking are low. Because if you're an alcoholic, chances are your friends are alcoholics. You spend your leisure time at the bar around people who are drinking. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you're an alcoholic, you likely have to quit your friends, your daily habits, your leisure time activities. Like, it's
who you define yourself as, and you see that as death, right?
And but it's what you're saying. It's not being formed by your environment. It's taking the stance of, I'm going to do my very best to manipulate, but maneuver myself in relation to the environment, but I'm in a more advantageous position.
You can manipulate your environment. You can change it, right? You're not stuck there. No one's ever stuck somewhere, unless you unless you really don't see that you're stuck. Then you're pretty stuck, because then you're blind. How do you know? How do you even know to progress, right?
That's the being in the Matrix, right? That's the analogy of it, right? So you don't know until you're pulled out, and then you can start to put it back together. But yeah.
Okay, so what's the time right now? Okay, it's an hour and a half mark.
Yeah, hour and a half, not 2.5 hours.
But
see, it reads like it says 2 hours and 34 minutes.
It reads as 2.
It's very silly. We got it now, though.
So yeah, I'm very excited about this course I'm going to be taking next week. It's gonna be almost like a week of feeling the therapy out way more, like, and like learning, exploring about it. So like when I come back, hopefully I can like talk about different things and the experience I had with that. And you were wanting to take a functional patterns course.
I'm going back and forth.
You're going back and forth. Yeah.
I'm trying to get information on it still.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's in Minneapolis, so it's a 14-hour drive.
Yeah. I mean, I saw online on
Facebook.
Facebook.
Broke.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much it costs, but even like I think it's 600 American.
Yeah.
So that's like 900 Canadian, and then plus 4 days in Minneapolis travel. It's like
it's good.
I don't have enough clients. Like I'm still only at like 5 clients, right? I need to take time to build a schedule before I actually start making money. I knew when I left the greenhouse that's the risk I was taking. I had to take the financial.
Well, you knew that you had to hustle, but that was I think that was the best choice you could have made. I feel like a lot of people like to choose security and comfort, and security and comfort often lead you into a box, and you realize you're just become a mouse in a study that just goes back and forth getting your cheese. That's what a salary is. That's what it sounds like it to me.
Unless you found a way to pimp it.
Yeah.
Right. To use it.
To use it to your advantage. Yeah.
Amplify your life.
And sometimes but just because like you work in a salary job doesn't mean you're in a box. You can do those things too, but you just have to be in the. But often cases workplaces are not like that. Like those.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
it's not constructive and because I'm going to be honest, I used to work for a Good Life Fitness, and no matter how much of a great trainer I was, and how much information and knowledge I spread, and no matter how much I helped my coworkers, right? Although I wasn't hitting my monthly hour every month, I was helping out the community in a different way, right? Where to the degree where some trainers couldn't train their clients because their clients were in pain and they didn't know what to do, so they would give it to me instead of having to cancel their personal training. So I became a Band-Aid, all right? And the fact that they couldn't give me a raise when I asked them so after I got a certification that would qualify, but they won't give it to you. And that's the type of workplaces that that's promoted. It's not, especially in places that's sales driven or all about number driven. Right. It's like you're no longer a person. You're just a number that's going to give us X amount of this.
Yeah, and I interact with that at work.
Yeah, too. and that's why I go you can't grow in those environments. Yeah. Those environments essentially become toxic in the end of it. But I think it's a great learning place.
You have to go through it.
Yeah, you have to go through it.
It's
a great place to be, but not where you want to be forever. Because I've seen some people being stuck in that.
I've already looked at the long term. Yeah, the pay raise and the long term projection of being in these companies. The thing is if you're a sheep and you can just put your head down, follow the rules, and go through the motions every day, you can exploit a lot of clients and make a career out of it at these places. Yeah. You just only have to sacrifice all your integrity.
Yeah.
It's I watch trainers at various gyms, and you can just tell by the way they're interacting with their clients and the type of exercises they're doing, they're not functioning at a high level of integrity. And I don't pretend to know everything about training.
Yes,
but what I do know is that I hold a level of integrity with my clients that even though the gym has certain expectations of me, I'm doing my best to meet those. But at the end of the day, the client comes first.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people don't take that into consideration because a lot of times it's not about the client. It's about more like, how can I just, kill this 1 hour? That's a lot of the way the trainers view and perceive.
I'm at work.
Yeah, I'm at work. It's no longer I'm with somebody where I can teach them a little bit of play and exploration about their bodies. So that's the method I used. And I got a lot of testimonials back when I quit Good Life and I moved here and I started my own thing from these past Good Life clients who giving me really good positive feedback, telling me it was a very good experience and a learning experience, that I was, I taught them how to do certain things. So someone who was like a woodworker who would have to carry heavy loads, I taught him how to use his hips to move. And so that spared his spine. That's going to save him like a lot of pain down the road. But not only that, probably a lot of chiropractic, physical therapist visits, like, and like all those nights spending, downing like medication, like painkillers. A lot of the doctors give patients or the patients painkillers instead of holistic approach, because they're all drug pushers in the end of it, right? So
you know what I just thought? A thought had me.
Yeah.
Like I like to say, is the mindset that we have towards our job or profession. It's not a job for me.
Yeah, it's more than
something I like to do.
It's my career.
We want to be the last person that our clients have to see.
Yeah,
we genuinely try to do that.
No,
we don't think we know everything, but we are trying to say, like, I want to do my best to give you something that you don't have to make monthly visits to the doctor.
Yes,
and I'm not your doctor saying don't do it.
This sounds crazy, but I'm trying to make myself obsolete. And I actually talked to someone about this recently.
What do you mean by obsolete?
So like I treat a chiropractor, and a chiropractor treats me, and it's a absolute chiropractic on Niagara Street on St. Catharines. So he was talking to me about, like, I can notice that you and I try to make our jobs obsolete. What I mean by that is we want to make sure the person is so well prepared, and almost like the same idea you're doing, and you give them enough information and allow them to be taught enough to the degree that they should come back to see you.
Yeah.
This is how the Good Life structure goes. You have to renew your clients.
Exactly.
You have to keep making them buy personal training even when they meet their goals. It's just like, wait a second, what are you telling me to do? You're telling me to make them my financial slaves? Yeah. That's what that is, right? It's like, hey, no, these people should only pay for what they need.
Like give them medication that doesn't solve the problem. Yeah, so the next time they get sick, they come back.
That's a Band-Aid. And like, giving people medication and pills have toxicity to them, right?
Right.
So like, when.
And they don't treat root cause.
Yeah, they don't treat root cause. It just treats symptoms. So that just means you're all masking your symptoms. What is that going to do? That's also crazy. It's the same thing as going to the gym, sitting on a bench, it's the chest press machine when you've been sitting 10 hours at work and sitting there to do more. Yeah, you're doing the same.
Rounded posture.
Yeah, you're doing the same idea there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's just taking a moment. I think people should just take a moment and just really think about, am I in control for this moment? Because recently I came across London Real, and it was that biologist that you talked about. What was his name?
Brett Weinstein?
No, it was Bruce. Not Bruce. There was a doctor. He was a biologist. And he talks about whatever his name was, but he talks about how like he talks about love and how like consciousness is in the front when you're in love. But I think you can just bring your damn consciousness to the forefront of your head at all times when you're actually so present and aware of your breathing, your surrounding, your visual, your auditory, like you're actually here. You're just perceiving everything at once and as it is. I think that would be the most important thing to teach clients first. I don't know why I had to say that, but like I think it's because it gives them almost like a tool to clear and reset their head, because that's actual meditation, right? So I think if we can teach, so in the end of it, I think our job too is we take it more than just training. We're trying to change people's behaviors because we're trying to change the way they move, right? We're trying to change their conditions, and that's I think a really far more noble cause than trying to make someone, lose. Well, like no, like in a like, but these people get all of the benefits, right? If we give them exercise and teach them how to move, they're not only learning a skill, they're exercising, losing weight.
You get all the benefits.
Yeah, you get all the benefits from weight, from
toning.
Exactly,
good
like
posture,
and I notice it like
to an extent.
And it might not look like a bodybuilder's, but like you don't want to look like that if you've obviously done it with a lot of drugs, and if you've done it with a lot of isolated exercises.
Or maybe you do want to do that, but don't confuse it with being healthier.
Yeah. Maybe that is what you want to do. Yeah.
I don't, like, CrossFit. I'm not a big fan of CrossFit.
Okay.
However, I'm not a fan of CrossFit because a lot of the things CrossFit do don't make people fit.
It's true.
But if you're a competitor and that's your thing, it's like we do martial arts.
Yeah.
Man, you get in a lot of dangerous positions in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
you're doing a lot of things with your body that maybe aren't healthy, but the risk reward calculation is in favor of reward. We get more benefit from it.
There is way more benefit in that.
It's the sacrifice we're making.
CrossFit doesn't have that risk and reward ratio. There's a huge risk. In fact, all the veteran CrossFitters are just getting like stem cell injections in their spines and their knees, like they destroyed their joints. And why is that? Is because their sport is so all it does is destroy your joints. But the idea and the concept of cross fitness, testing fitness on different platforms across all platforms for one individual is amazing, because that makes that person challenge every movement imaginable. That was what that was supposed to be, but they obviously put their own brand and twisted it.
They don't really do everything possible. They almost only do sagittal.
They only do sagittal plane movements. They absolutely do lunges. Actually they don't do a lot of rotation at all. Like they don't. It's testament. It's not a true test of skill, because it's because it's a test of capacity almost. Right? It's how much can you do of this, or how fast can you do of this Murphy run where it consists of this, right? It's a test of capacity.
It's competition.
Yeah,
that's why I say I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
Yeah,
that's
but the idea is good.
Yeah,
but the idea is good, I think. Right. Like same with bodybuilding. The idea is good, building more muscles on your body to help maybe promote better metabolism, increase bone density, reduce.
That was the first step in a new understanding of how the body works.
Yes.
Like that was the what do you call it? The prototype of moving the body. Yeah. It's like, big muscles, big strength.
But now we got to move
there.
Yeah.
Then you move into bodybuilding, which is a little bit more compound movements.
Yeah.
Similar concepts, but at least now you're adding a component of speed, right? And you're trying to harness explosiveness.
This is crazy, though.
They're still very sagittal plane in this, and then you get some of these movement people start to emerge, and the functional movement culture is now growing to where there's a lot of people doing things right, a lot of people doing things wrong, but it's
taking shape.
It's taking shape.
Yeah, it's better than it has ever better been. But it's crazy how we're almost like going like it's like a dark ages. Like it really is because we're going like, kettlebell swings are amazing now. Like the past few years, it's just been like hailed as one of the holy grail of exercises, right? That tool is like that exercise tool of a swinging with a handle with a heavy object. It's been around for like over 2,000, 3,000 years. Yeah. So it's like we already knew this.
Right.
And the fact that we tried to make it scientific based and tried to research it, we went full, I'm going to say this word, retard. We did, because we tried to, the fact that bodybuilding became an image of how a fitness should be, that already shows you
they actually become physically retarded.
You decrease your capacity to understand movement. Like movement is a language.
Your body loses the ability.
Yeah. So I was talking about that last. Yeah, I was talking about that last time. Yeah, like the whole you've already learned how to do a curl, like it may be doing it maybe like 4 or 5 times. After that, you're probably good. You're probably pretty good at it. Right. You probably know how to squeeze your biceps. Great. Now what's next, right? Now what's now you got to do now you have to.
Don't ever do bicep curls. That's.
Yeah, I mean there's always benefits of it. Like what if you could do a bicep curl with a certain tempo and then engage to improve, create because your bicep also has to do with a lot of whipping because of the tendons, right? The bicep tendon allowing the like you said for a throw, right? So if you can actually maybe strengthen the bicep, the tendons get stronger, and it could have uses, maybe hypertrophic uses.
Maybe. Here's the thing, I'm not
only when it has actual problem though.
Right.
Only when the bicep is the weakest link of the.
If not, you train it as a unit.
Yeah, then you train it as a unit.
Yeah, for maybe rehabilitation purposes.
That's exactly.
There are some isolation.
There's some uses for it. There is uses for it.
Yeah, because I'm not. I started to do a little research on it. I don't have conclusions yet, but I was trying to look at simply answer the question: has exercise been proven to have performance outcomes? because.
Like, what do you mean by performance outcomes?
Right now, tests on strength and conditioning and all, and exercise in general, basically use a few plyometric or actual performance-based tests, and then it's all isolated muscle power or simply a squat or a squat jump or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to look into, have people tested, like, does this exercise intervention actually translate into performance?
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
Testable measures.
We were talking about this last time. Yeah.
Does a plyometric program increase the amount of baskets that LeBron James scores a year, or does this?
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just gonna take a quick break right now. Yeah. Sorry about that. Keep talking if you want.
Yeah, I'll keep her going. Once again, we have no sponsors yet. Not too worried about it. So we got really big before this podcast, so it's been all over the place. We're a little slow to start, but I think we regrouped and we caught the reins about an hour in or so. Man, I'm really enjoying this thing. Jimmy and I, we knew each other for maybe 3 weeks before we decided we were going to do this podcast. We met at the gym one day. We were discussing. We actually got into talking about. The first conversation we had was about expanding your ribs to connect your diaphragm to your TVAs. And once I realized that he was geeked out about that, I said, let's chill and whatnot. So we got together and we hung out maybe 3 times. And we would just go walk around or hang out in the car, smoke a little bit. And we would just go 0 to deep immediately. Like this podcast started. Like we literally sat down and Jimmy just went deep right off the bat. Like that's how we were right off the bat. So it was, I think, the 3rd time we hung out. I was just talking about.
You wanted to talk. You're like, hey, we should start.
We initiated the podcast.
Well, not even podcast. You're just like, we should just start recording what we're saying.
Right.
For ourselves too.
Right.
Not just even for like, thank you for whoever has listened to what we have to say. To be fully honest, you're nuts if you have.
I know my sister is. Hi, Chris.
If you're listening to what we have to say, but I guess we have some interesting perspectives. Perhaps not everybody has views on, and I think we live an interesting life because we pay really close attention to our bodies. And that's a perspective where a lot of people don't have because a lot of people don't do that. Mm-hmm. So, maybe we do have a lot of good things to offer for people, so like,
and we're actually willing to make the changes. Like, I'm actually embodying the functional patterns.
I always
that I'm doing.
Yeah, I always tell people,
the
like,
teachings.
You're doing this too, but I always tell people, I'm like, I'm test subject number 1.
Yeah. I went through the same thing, bodybuilding, powerlifting.
I do it to myself first before I make a client do it. Mm-hmm. I test the stretch out to myself before I make someone else feel it. Because, it's like, why wouldn't you? Because that too, it's like preparation.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people go into things like half planned, half like, you want to be like, more half like reactive to a situation too. But, you have
There's a balance.
It's called law of cybernetics. The unit that has the most amount of behavioral responses available to it controls the entire system. So the unit within a system, I talked about with this before too. So if you have the most amount, if you're the unit within a system, so let's say you're like, you do whatever as a job, right? And then within your company, that's your environment. So or a system. So unit within a system that has the most amount of behavioral responses. So you have the most amount of available, you prepare the most for like an interview, or you prepare the worst, the most for the worst, let's say, right?
Yeah.
You control the outcome or the situation or the whole system,
right?
So being prepared means you have the most control. Yeah. And like I like to be in a position to control as much as I want to, because like one thing I learned in jiu-jitsu with Matt is if you don't have good position, he chokes you out, right? So it's all about being like almost having to go into it really pre-planned, like what will be Matt doing. That's the only way.
I really don't do that. I play paper guard.
You play, yeah, I do too.
Samuel's talks calls it paper guard.
I don't.
Pretty easy to pass my guard,
I just do reactive rolling. Like I don't really like.
But it's time thing.
But there are certain things where when I totally notice a difference when I go into it planning to do what I'm gonna do. Then it changes because I had the most amount of behavioral responses to what was gonna happen.
And even if you failed, at every step, you were primed to pay attention. So you're more susceptible to receiving the data that you need to make yourself better next time. If you're just going into things nonchalant, your attention is wishy-washy. You're not focused. You're not paying attention. You're
not present.
You're just
You're there, but you're not there. You're seeing, but you're not
going
seeing.
Through the motions,
right?
You're
here, but you don't hear.
If you say, I'm going to do this knee slice pass, right? We were working the knee slice pass last week.
I was so out of that class too.
I find myself rolling when I go to pass. I don't think I'm going to do this variation of the knee slice pass. I just find myself throwing my knee and then getting my back taken. But when you actually say, okay, I'm going to try this variation of the knee slice pass. I'm going to block the hip. I'm going to get my knee on the midline onto the sternum like Sam's talking about, where you're not actually doing the knee slice, where we're going into the floating pass. Or you can still go to the knee slice. Actually trying this technique, when you get it wrong, I tried this technique and this time I didn't block the hip. I know what to fix next time. Then you fix that. Then you run into more problems. But it's the focus, the intent.
So that's a really important thing about. So excuse us if there's any noise that you guys can hear. That is just my parents.
You can definitely hear it in here. That's okay. At least we're authentic.
At least you're authentic. So if you want, we can actually kind of call it if you want, because it's getting to the 2-hour mark.
2 hour mark.
It's kind of pretty far. So
it's what time is it? Oh, yeah, it's almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good to go, but
that was I'm sure like it sounds like a good point to wrap it up. I think it's gonna start to get a little noisy, so be a good time to call it. So any last words, Matt?
Man, keep hammering. Let's go, champ. So all my hashtags that I use of other people's. Get after it. I just want everyone to take into consideration about their bodies a little bit. That's what I wanted to get out of this podcast. Be a little bit more aware, just a little bit more. Like it doesn't have to be anything like substantial. Like just for a minute, try to hold a minute of attention of what you're doing. Or like doing something that you're so comfortable doing, taking a second thought to do it a little bit better. Something like brushing your teeth, or something like eating your food, like chew your food. Like usually, I'm bad at it. Like sometimes I just start swallowing my goddamn food and it's solid. I'm an animal.
So that's what I want to. That's my last word.
I'll second that. If you can get into the habit of doing the small things, from the limited life experience I have, they really do add up. Lately, I've been practicing on expanding my rib cage when I breathe. Winging out the rib cage, like the lower fibers of my ribs, or the lower
when you introduced that idea to me, I've been just practicing that nonstop, man.
So I've realized all the restrictions in my ribs. Like it's a workout to.
I recently found a way to
expand my ribs and not breathe into my upper chest with tight neck muscles.
I found the recent. Actually, I'll get into that next time about piriformis and your psoas and how they actually, create almost change the way your hip tilts, and like why they're like that. The
psoas is the hip flexor.
Yeah, and the way it's just like the way they look even from the side view and all that. So that's something I want to talk about perhaps next time. Because a lot of people don't know about those two little muscles, but they know. So I want to talk.
Well, next time, Slippy Jimmy is going to tell us about those two little muscles.
Yeah, and like what it could mean for you if you have tight hips or anything like that. Yeah, and maybe next time Matt will have something else, maybe a different research on something, and give us an interesting perspective on something that's controversial perhaps.
Most likely,
that'll happen.
Yeah.
There's also a good chance
I'm just gonna talk about some ridiculous stories.
Yeah.
For this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Going up to London.
Okay.
We have I was on the Western baseball team when I was in university, and we have an alumni weekend.
Oh yeah.
We just started it last year, so we go up Saturday. We golf.
Excuse me.
We go out, go to a little crazy on Saturday night, and then sit behind the bench on Sunday and just completely annihilate the self-esteem of every player on the opposing team. So always good stories. Those guys are amazing. So hopefully we can what's the word? Get into a little debauchery.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for your story. So yeah, thank you for everyone. Who listened.
So we have a name. Free to offend.
Free to offend, I think.
Don't be afraid to be offended either.
Yeah, and you're free to offend us as well. Feel free.
Yeah. At the end of the day, nobody gives a fuck if you're offended. That's the point.
Yeah, I just want people to just have an open mind to things. It's just, even if, like, I always find the last little word is you really learn from what you don't like. Mm-hmm. You learn things the best about things you disagree the most.
Well, that's like, man, I learned so much just doing this research.
Because my bias was so much in the forefront. It made me sick.
I was actually surprised. I'm like, Matt, that's a pretty good thing you did, because I know how much like coconut oil is like a huge thing for you. Like it's one a staple in your diet. Yeah. So, well, like maybe not a staple in your diet, but something you definitely have in your diet.
Day.
Every day. So,
but yeah, that's
Hopefully, I'll do some research. Yeah. I like the accountability. Like I said in the first episode, it's like this is it's enough to force me to do some legitimate research. At least, I'm not going to come out sharp with it. Like I said, the gears are rusty in the research department.
I mean, me too. Like, I'm trying to remember all the things I read in the articles. I'm like, man, I'm not as sharp as I used to be.
Yeah, but we also got really baked.
That's true. That's true. I'm not gonna. There's no arguing that.
The database is it's hard to pull up, but
yeah.
And it's good.
Perfect. And I'm out.
So you're out next week. I won't see you. I'll see you Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ciao, everybody.
Ciao, buddy.
Yeah.